am Ben with the BTC Sessions. I'm here at IKEA in Deerfoot Meadows in Calgary, buying some background stuff to make my live streams look a little bit more inviting. Anyways, today I am bringing to you an interview I had earlier this week with a man by the name of Erik Voorhees. He is the CEO of Shapeshift, and we get to talking about a lot of stuff. How he started in the industry, what Shapeshift is, how it works, and about a new project called Prism, which is a smart contract triggered portfolio in which you can invest in various crypto assets. So I hope you enjoy my interview with Erik Voorhees.
Hello everyone, I am here for an interview with a man who's been in the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency space for quite some time now. I'm very excited to sit down and chat with him. He was super supportive of my channel early on. He was nice enough to chat back to me anytime I was to reach out. I made a video on one of his websites, and he was very quick to blast that video all over Twitter, and yeah, I've really enjoyed seeing what he's been doing in the space. I'm going to let him introduce himself. Erik, can you give everybody a rundown of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Erik Voorhees. I am the CEO of Shapeshift. I've been involved in the Bitcoin world since 2011, involved in a number of projects from BitInstant to Coinapulse and Satoshi Dice. And today, and for the last 3 years, Shapeshift has been my full-time pursuit and passion.
Fantastic. So I'm just going to jump into a bunch of questions here. I'm going to start with some personal ones, then I'm going to get into some of the endeavors that you've been working on and exciting things coming down the pipeline. So cool. Here we go. So first of all, I was going to ask, what ideals do you hold, do you think, that led you into this space?
I think just one ideal, which was that money should be a product of the market and not of a coercive monopoly. So, pre-Bitcoin, there really wasn't a good alternative to fiat currency. Gold works great to hold wealth, but it's inconvenient for purchases in the modern economy. And I was very frustrated that there wasn't really a market for real market-based monies, and then Bitcoin comes along, and when I realized that it couldn't be shut down and that it was vastly more efficient and easier to use than anything related to banks and fiat, I felt it was probably inevitable that it would take over the world. So here we are 6 years later, and it is doing just that.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind, especially this year. It's been pretty insane what we've seen with the price and just even news developments. It seems every day there's something new happening. Now, you over the past, especially the last couple of years, I think originally you held the belief that Bitcoin was the one, but you obviously, with your endeavors lately, you've been open to the idea of multiple blockchains for multiple use cases. Can you detail a little bit of what led you to that line of thinking?
Yeah, so I was certainly what's known as a Bitcoin maximalist, which means someone who believes that there can really only be one digital asset and that asset will be Bitcoin inevitably. I held that view, I think, because Bitcoin was the first one and what I was most interested and invested in. And because I didn't realize how many different use cases and features these different blockchains and the tokens built on them can have. So that's been one of the, I think, the biggest mistakes that I held early on, and one of my biggest evolutions in what I've learned is that this technology is spawning thousands of different types of assets. Some of these will be cryptocurrencies used for payments. Some of these will be various forms of money. Many of them will not be currency or money at all. They'll be used for all sorts of things. And part of the greatness of the decentralization that Bitcoin promised, I think, is actually found in the decentralization of multiple blockchains and multiple assets on those.
Awesome. Now, this belief in multiple blockchains, I think, led you to create something by the name of Shapeshift. Now, some of my viewers can be new to the cryptocurrency space. Can you describe what Shapeshift is and how you came up with the idea, how it came about.
Yeah, Shapeshift, very simply, is an asset exchange for digital assets. So it's a way of converting any digital asset into any other instantly. So there's no user accounts. You don't sign up. You don't have to deposit funds or go through some approval. You just access the website, choose the asset you have, like Bitcoin, and the asset you want, like Dash or Monero or Litecoin. And then you send in your Bitcoin, and we send you the one that you want. So it's a simple service and basically meant to be a utility for the whole ecosystem so that any person or machine can move between these assets with as little friction as possible.
Fantastic. And so it's not peer-to-peer, like are you guys holding the assets yourself? Are you assuming the risk then?
We hold an inventory of every asset that we support. And so unlike most exchanges where a buyer and a seller are being matched by the exchange, we are always the seller. So you come to us because you want to buy one of the assets that we have, and we sell you an asset from our own inventory. We then, through our own algorithmic trading, will go and repurchase the inventory that we're selling, and the spread between what we sell at and what we can go trade at is our revenue model.
Okay, all right, fair enough. So how has the growth of the platform been since launch? Like what kind of volumes are you seeing with Shapeshift?
So here's a fun stat. So July of 2014 was the month that we launched. And the first full month of Shapeshift's operations, we did about $25,000 of customer orders. Last month in July, we did, which is 3 years since, we did $250 million of customer orders, which is 1,000,000% growth in 3 years. So it's been phenomenal. I mean, just this year we've grown about 15x just since the start of 2017. Part of this I think is because we have a great service that people like, and a big part of it is just that the entire industry is growing in a great and beautiful way right now. So we're happy to be along for the ride.
Awesome. Now, are there certain trading pairs that are taking a large chunk of that volume? Like what are the most popular assets that are being traded around on Shapeshift?
Yeah, this changes every so often. I mean, Bitcoin and Ethereum are the two most important digital assets, and so people should expect that would be our highest volume, and it is. However, what is increasing in volume rapidly is volume between alts to each other. So like Augur's rep token to Dash, or Litecoin to Ripple. Anything that does not have Bitcoin as one side or the other. So we call them alt-to-alt trades. The alt-to-alt category was a year ago about 2% of our volume, which means Bitcoin was almost always involved in one side or the other of the trade. And today it is like 20 to 40%. So that's been a really interesting phenomenon that's happening, and I think is emblematic of the fact that the industry is diversifying and moving in lots of different directions. And this happens even though Bitcoin itself is growing in price and usage and value. So it's really an exciting phenomenon to see.
So it's kind of a win-win, I guess, for everybody.
Yeah, it's definitely not the case that an increase in volume of Ethereum token trades is decreasing the volume of Bitcoin. All the volumes of everything have been increasing, but the proportions of them are changing constantly.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, recently we had the split with Bitcoin, and then we had Bitcoin Cash pop up, and I wanted to get to some insight as to how that was with the team, because there was a lot of pressure, I imagine, to support it as quickly as possible. And so what did that look like when that came out? Because it kind of came out of nowhere. There was very little warning that it was going to happen, and then just a couple weeks and there it was. So what did that process look like, and was it tough to get it listed as quickly as you did?
Yeah. So yeah, there was only like two weeks of notice that it was really going to happen. So we did all we could to prepare for it. And in one way, it's just like adding another Bitcoin. But because it is a fork of Bitcoin, there are some special considerations we had to be careful of, specifically related to replay protection and things like that. So we watched it very closely. We got as much of the work done as we could ahead of time. And then when the fork happened, we turned off the website, the entire website, and then turned things back on as we started feeling comfortable with how it was going. And it all worked remarkably smoothly. The fork was a success on a technical level. The Bitcoin Cash forked off of Bitcoin. Both chains are running well, and now it's done. So it's just like another asset on Shapeshift at this point.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question here. This popped up on my Twitter when I said that I was going to be interviewing you. Now, I think this question, it does come off abrasive, but I'm going to also...
An abrasive question on Twitter?
I know. Who would have thought?
That's weird.
But I'm going to read it verbatim,
Okay.
but then I'm also going to interject a bit of my own question pertaining to this one. The question from Vake on Twitter was, please ask him if selling overhyped but ultimately worthless tokens is an honorable business endeavor, to which I'm going to add, I guess the question for me here would be, is there a process that goes into picking the assets that you list? Is there ones that you decide not to list for any reason? And what's your reasoning behind that?
Yeah, so first of all, if we could figure out a way to tokenize snarky adolescents, we would be billionaires by now. So while we're working on that, we continue to sell coins through Shapeshift. And we set up Shapeshift to be an exchange, a marketplace where people could convert any leading digital asset into any other. So unless we see clear evidence that a certain project is a scam, if it sees significant trade volume out in the market, we will add it because there is a market demand to trade that asset. The token that we have that has been called a scam more than any other is actually Bitcoin. And I have been refuting stupid claims of coins being called scams since 2011 when I first got into this space. So at this point, I don't take it seriously when people just yell about coins that they don't like and call them scams. The word gets overused way too often, no more so than with Bitcoin. So yeah, we add anything that gets popular and that people want to trade. And just like most startups fail, most new projects fail, most new tokens will fail. They are all people trying to experiment with this technology. We don't pass judgment on which ones are good or not. I mean, we have personal opinions on these ourselves, but as Shapeshift, as an exchange, we let the market work this stuff out, and it'll be clear in the future which assets were useful and which weren't. But I don't think anyone has the wisdom or foresight to know what the world will be using 20 years from now.
Yeah, and you know, I would echo that sentiment. I mean, the Bitcoin, the whole idea behind it was having a free market and essentially choice of your currency. And so I do find it a little strange, the idea that we should prevent people from trading an asset if they want to trade it. People will just have to do their own research and decide what is worthwhile and what is not. Is that?
If we're being intellectually honest, that person who said that comment obviously holds Bitcoin and maybe doesn't hold anything else, and he probably is not confident enough in why Bitcoin matters and why it's important. So he feels some kind of need to crap on everything else and encourage others not to be interested in those because he thinks people should only hold Bitcoin, which is an extremely adolescent way to view this stuff. And as someone who has been confident and understanding of why Bitcoin is going to change the world, I do not fear the fact that there are other digital assets.
And the fact that there are other digital assets, it hasn't diminished the impact you think Bitcoin is going to have overall? Like, do you think that...
No, they are complementary. So the fact that Ethereum exists is complementary to Bitcoin. And I mean, this is provable simply in the fact that both of them have seen tremendous growths in their market cap since Ethereum existed. They are not mutually exclusive to each other. They do different things. They have different efficiencies, and both are better off because each other exists. And so even though a lot of coins are going to be stupid and fall towards zero over time, some of these are actually going to change the world. And we're happy to allow people to trade them in an efficient way on Shapeshift.
Awesome. So I imagine the natural evolution from Shapeshift is something that was just announced not too long ago by the name of Prism. Can you explain what Prism is, what it does, and when and how it will be available?
Yeah, Prism is currently in private beta, so we've been trickling users in. Anyone can sign up for the waitlist at prism.exchange.
I haven't got my invite yet, so
that's the URL. Well, you can maybe message me and I'll sneak you in. Okay. So Prism is a way to create a portfolio of digital assets. And the problem it's trying to solve is that if you have, let's say, $10,000 and you love this crypto stuff and you want to buy a bunch of them, you have two kind of crappy options. One is you can download a bunch of wallets and synchronize all the blockchains and deal with the storage and protection of all the private keys. Or you can do what most people do, which is to just leave all the money at an exchange on deposit there, which is easier, but is not a good practice for all the reasons we know. So Prism was meant to solve both of those. It's meant to be easier than both options and safer than both options. And it's built on Ethereum using smart contracts to essentially allow someone to create a portfolio of whatever coin allocation they want, 20% LITECOIN, 10% Dash, however they want to do it. And then they back that portfolio with Ethereum as collateral. Shapeshift also backs that same portfolio with collateral. And what you then get is a fully collateralized portfolio, which becomes non-custodial and trustless. In other words, it lives as a smart contract that tracks the value. And after it's created, you have to worry what Shapeshift does. We could go away tomorrow and all the prisms that exist currently will still operate correctly. They can be cashed out by the user that set them up. So it's a trustless way to get exposure to this stuff in a much safer and easier way than people had prior.
So does that mean if you're putting up collateral for these prisms, does that mean if the person that set it up, are you essentially on the opposite side of that trade? Like if they make money, then you lose. If they lose, then you gain. Is that kind of the?
Yep. Yeah. So obviously, so when someone creates a portfolio, they're going long on those assets, which means if we're taking the opposite, that we are going short, we as Shapeshift. So that would be a very silly business model for us to just short everything that people are going long on, because we would get wrecked in trading parlance. So there's an easy solution to that. Since we go short on the Prism portfolio, we can simply buy the asset ourselves in our own wallets elsewhere and hedge. And thus, if the asset goes up, we lose on the Prism, but we gained on our hedge and vice versa. So if we do that correctly, it's a wash, and then it doesn't matter.
Okay, all right.
And long term, since that is capital intensive and we don't have $1 billion to back $1 billion of portfolios for people, ultimately the path for Prism is that we open up the short side as well. And then people can create long or short portfolios and they start backing each other. And Shapeshift helps facilitate those people in the market, but is not trying to back it all up ourselves. So that's just a temporary.
Absolutely. Now, you said it's built upon Ethereum using Ethereum smart contracts. So is that, I mean, it's pretty obvious why that was done right now, because it's the largest, well, the largest smart contract platform out there. But is Shapeshift ever open to the idea of using another blockchain or smart contract platform down the road? And what would be the scenario in which they did that? For instance, I mean, there is Ethereum Classic. There is, once SegWit is activated, Rootstock on Bitcoin, I believe, can enable some of that stuff. So with other systems, are you guys open to that, or are you pretty well entrenched? Or
we're not only open to it, we have already done a lot of the work to port Prism over to Rootstock on Bitcoin. So as soon as that becomes available on Bitcoin, there will be Prism for Ethereum and Prism for Bitcoin, and both will work the same way from a user perspective, but one will use Ethereum as collateral and one will use Bitcoin as collateral.
Oh, wow. So that's going to be like basically available once Rootstock is up and running then, or?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh,
yeah, we're as excited about that as anyone. So we can't wait for that to come out.
That's fantastic. Okay. Now, as far as the fee structure in Prism, from a user perspective, what are they looking at as far as fees?
So our revenue model is that when a Prism is closed, there's a 2.4% fee on the closing of that portfolio. So that's how we make money on it. Then there's a 0.5% fee if you rebalance. So when your portfolio is open, you can rebalance. So there's 0.5% of a fee on the portion of the portfolio that is rebalanced. And that's it. That's
okay.
That's the fee structure.
Did there used to be a different one? Didn't there used to be like a 1%?
Yeah, and this I think confused a lot of people, and we got some flack for it when we first announced it. When we first announced it, there was, in addition to those, a 1% per month capital fee, and that was basically paid by the user to whoever is backing the Prism with capital, which is us. And the 1% was sort of just a round number to, but it was highly contentious, so we removed that. The long-term plan was always that once the other side is open, so people can go long or short, there will be a capital cost paid by one side to the other based on the mismatch in demand. So if way more people want to go long than there are putting up capital to go short, the fee from the long to the short will gradually increase until an equilibrium is found. So what you'll then have is a market-based rate on capital paid by the side that is larger to the side that needs encouragement. So that was always the long-term plan, and we just scrapped the 1% placeholder for now anyway.
Okay, all right. Now, my only other question about Prism right now is what's the target demographic? And when I say demographic, I mean in relation to the crypto industry. Is this going to be people that need to have a decent understanding of how a smart contract works, or is this going to be relatively user-friendly for somebody who's, maybe dabbled in crypto and bought Bitcoin and played around a little bit? Are they going to be able to understand this system?
Yeah, definitely the latter. So you don't need to know anything about smart contracts whatsoever to use Prism. It's all just a very simple web interface. You don't need to use any weird Ethereum command line codes or anything like that. You just point and click in your web browser, add assets to the portfolio, and then you send in Ethereum from wherever you hold your Ethereum. So as long as you know how to send and receive Ethereum from an Ethereum wallet, you can use Prism. That's really all it takes.
Great.
Yeah,
yeah, awesome. I'm excited to give it a try. Now, I've got a few last questions for you here. These are going to kind of hop all over the place. Sure. I did just interview Kenn Hodler.
Kenn Hodler.
Great last name. So he is the CTO of KeepKey, the hardware wallet, and you guys, Shapeshift, have just acquired them. I was wondering if you could maybe tell me a bit about how that came about, and what does this mean for KeepKey as a device, as a platform? Is it going to allow for expedited updates and everything like that, and more assets involved? And just tell me what you can.
Yeah. So we've had a business partnership with KeepKey for a little over a year. They integrated the Shapeshift API so that users with their KeepKey could exchange directly between the assets on the KeepKey without ever visiting a website, which is pretty cool. And so we've always had a good relationship there. And then earlier this year, we realized that there was an opportunity there for an acquisition. So it made sense, and we bought them. It was an all-cash deal, or as Reuters reported, it was an all-Bitcoin deal, which was cool. It was paid in Bitcoin. And so KeepKey will maintain the same brand, the same product. It'll run continually as KeepKey. And we will, over time, make sure that there's a really cohesive user experience between KeepKey and Shapeshift. We don't want people leaving funds at exchanges. Basically, I've seen so many people get burned by this that I feel like one of the things that we can do as Shapeshift to help move this forward is moving people away from that model. And so when people have a KeepKey, they can now exchange directly from that device. And there will be more and more advanced ways to do that as Shapeshift rolls out more features on its own exchange. So it's just a way to have a really cohesive user experience between the two products, and we're pretty excited about it. I mean, there are three major hardware wallet companies in the world: Trezor, Ledger, and KeepKey. They're all three are awesome. I've used all three. I love all three. So the opportunity for us to actually run one of these was very cool. So yeah, we're excited about it.
Fantastic. I really look forward to seeing what comes out of this acquisition, and I guess what integrations will be there in the future. So I was super excited to hear. I'm going to keep going here. I've just got a couple more questions. One of them, we'll say it's another abrasive Twitter question.
Sure.
Surprise, surprise.
Those are my favorite.
Yeah. So I'm going to read it, but I will echo, I guess, some mild concern along the lines of what this person is saying here. Matthias Martinez says, ask him why on earth is he supporting 2x after SegWit 2x he's referring to, after Jihan/Roger/via BTC broke the agreement and big blocks are already available on Bitcoin Cash. To which I will add, the main concern that I have right now looking at the SegWit 2x thing is the fact that Bitcoin Cash split, and I think maybe some of the people that agreed to SegWit 2x to avoid a hard fork or to avoid a split of the Bitcoin network feel a little peeved off that they went ahead and that via BTC went ahead and launched this anyways. And what I'm curious about is, do you think that it has in any way, shape, or form hurt the New York agreement, hurt the 2x part of SegWit 2x, knowing that they're not bound technologically, that it's more, again, just basically a handshake deal? And are you worried that there's enough pushback on one side for this 2x hard fork to be contentious in November? And is there worry about the technological merits as far as switching away from Bitcoin Core, if that's what happens? Do you think that there's worry to be had? I mean, there's always is, but what's your take on the situation? I guess echoing this person's concerns about 2x after Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah. So lots of good questions wrapped up in all that. So the New York agreement was basically an agreement entered into somewhat informally, but on a verbal handshake at least, between many of the major Bitcoin companies in the industry and the vast majority of miners. So both a super majority of businesses and miners, all coming together to basically say, look, we love SegWit and we want that to happen. And we also think conservatively bigger blocks is a good idea as well. We've had an impasse for 2 years and the community has devolved into nothing but bickering and fighting over this stupid shit. Let's just have both because both are good. They're not mutually exclusive, and let's push this thing forward. That agreement has only been betrayed by Via BTC, who was one of dozens of signers. Via BTC, and I don't know them, and I don't know why they did this, after agreeing to that agreement, went ahead and forked on August 1st to create Bitcoin Cash. So I have no idea why they did that, other than they probably just don't want anything to do with Core and they want 8 megabyte blocks, and so they helped make that happen. Everyone else that signed that agreement remains committed to it, including Jihan and Bitmain. And I don't know why people have been lumping, because Bitmain has done exactly what it said it would. It signed the agreement. It said that it wants that to happen. It said if the agreement, or if SegWit does not get activated by the 1st, it would a fork of its own. but SegWit was activated by the first, and so Bitmain has maintained its position just as it said it would. So now we're still in the same situation where a majority of the miners and a majority of the businesses are going to cause this fork to happen. And I absolutely support this project because I want SegWit and I want larger blocks, and most of all, I want the community, the portion of the community which I think is often silent, to actually move forward on common ground. And this is the attempt to do so. So the fork is absolutely happening. No one knows how contentious or how, I guess contentious is the right word, how contentious it will be, meaning how many people on the other chain there will be. Is this going to be 95% go with SegWit 2x, or is this going to be a minority go with SegWit 2x? We don't know. We'll see. But then the market will sort it out, and there will be 3 Bitcoin chains. There will be the 8 megabyte block, there will be the 1 megabyte block with SegWit, and there will be the 2 megabyte block with SegWit.
And every one of them claiming that they're the one true Bitcoin, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the one true Bitcoin is a title that emerges out of the marketplace.
Yeah.
From a confluence of things, right? The longest chain is a variable. The most community support is a variable. The most users, the highest price. All these things together create the one true Bitcoin. I do not believe that the Bitcoin Core development team has a monopoly on that name. If the Bitcoin Core chain maintains the longest and the highest price and the most users, that remains Bitcoin, and that's great. So honestly, at this point, I don't really care which one ends up winning, because the forks have actually moved the community forward. The debates are over, and the chips will fall where they may. And while it causes a lot of chaos in the short term, it causes the price to go crazy, and certainly causes some brand damage for Bitcoin. Long term, I think it actually makes the entire community healthier and is going to be really bullish for whatever chain emerges the victor.
Yeah, and I think this is just going to, it's always scary when stuff like this happens for the first time, but I think this is just going to be a fact of being in crypto. You're just going to have to get used to this kind of thing, because any time that there's an impasse and we really can't get past it and people are really convicted and want to go a certain way, we've learned that they can't, right? Bitcoin Cash is there. It's sitting at number 3 on coincap.io. It just passed Ripple this morning. It's going to continue to exist. People want to use it, and that's fine. And I think that's the great part about cryptocurrency. If you don't like the coin you're using, you don't have to use it. You can go somewhere else. You can do whatever you like.
There's pre-Ethereum hard fork and even through today, a lot of people feel like a hard fork is some horrible thing that has to be avoided at all costs. It was to that view in the past, but seeing what's happened with Ethereum after its hard fork, seeing what's happened with Bitcoin after its first hard fork, and knowing that another one is coming, I actually don't think it's such a bad thing. It's really crazy in the short term, but both sides of the Ethereum chain are more valuable than Ethereum was when it started. And the community that disagreed about a fundamental thing has gone in 2 different directions. And instead of spending all day fighting with each other, they all have their own chain, and now they build what they want to build on those chains. I think hard forks shouldn't be taken lightly. They shouldn't happen every day or every month. But once in a while they will happen, and that's okay. It can actually make the whole system healthier. And it's part of the decentralization that Bitcoin brings us anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I've got one final question for you. And this one I always end with, because I like to get some insight into why people like being in this space so much. So my last question to you is, what does the advent of Bitcoin and I suppose other decentralized cryptocurrencies represent to you?
So the most important thing it represents to me is that there is now a market for money. And blockchains can do a lot of things beyond money, but it's really the money stuff that makes me really excited. The fact that people have an alternative from fiat now, that they can use a private free market money, is one of the greatest things to happen to mankind ever. So that's what I'm proud to be part of. And I'm excited for the day when my children and grandchildren are sitting in school and laughing about how back in the day people used to think that only government could handle money and how horrible and inefficient and unethical that was, and how thank goodness that a bunch of pioneers came along and actually didn't ask for permission to do anything, just built an alternative that was flat out better. I think that's the coolest legacy I could ever hope to be part of. So that's why I care about this stuff.
I love that. All right. Well, Erik, thank you so much for coming on to talk with me here. Can you let everybody know where to find you and the projects that you are associated with?
Yeah. So Shapeshift.io is my day job. And I can also be found on Twitter at Erik Voorhees, ErikVoorhees. Those are good ways to reach me. My email is Erik, ERK, at shapeshift.io, and always happy to chat with people. So thanks a lot for having me on the show.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I hope I'll chat with you again soon.
I'm sure we will.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe, drop a tip if you're able to, and share this video. Also, if you'd really like to support the show, please check out my affiliate links down below. You can buy a Ledger or a Trezor, which are Bitcoin and cryptocurrency hardware wallets. If you pick one up using the link, then it helps me add more to this show, create more content, and make that content even better. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.